On my 70th birthday, my daughter posted counting down the days until freedom. I saw it while cutting my cake. The room went silent. I smiled, hugged her, and whispered something in her ear. The next morning, she was at my door crying and begging, but it was too late. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching, get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. The 70 candles flickered, a constellation of flames atop the frosting. The warmth of the gathered faces around my dining table was a physical pressure against my skin. My grandson, Jamal, his smile wide, held the cake steady. My daughter, Chloe, stood directly opposite me, her phone held aloft to capture the moment. "Make a wish, Mom," she called out, her voice bright and carrying. The room, full of cousins, a few old friends, echoed her. "Make a wish, Ellie." I closed my eyes for a second. The wish was simple, habitual: health for my family, peace. I opened my eyes, leaned forward, and blew. A collective cheer went up, followed by clapping. Smoke from the extinguished candles curled into the air. "All right, let's get this masterpiece cut," I said, reaching for the silver cake knife. It was a beautiful cake, 3 tiers of red velvet, my favorite. Chloe had insisted on ordering it from some new boutique bakery. It was almost too pretty to cut. "Hold on, Mom, let me get one more shot for the gram," Chloe said, not looking up from her screen. Her thumbs moved rapidly. I paused, the knife hovering. The chatter in the room continued, a comfortable hum. My friend Sarah handed me a stack of small plates. Jamal, ever helpful, took the knife from me. "I'll do the honors, Grandma, you sit." He guided me to the head of the table. I smiled at him, squeezing his shoulder. As he began to cut precise slices, Chloe finally put her phone down and came to help serve. The first slices were passed to the eldest guests. I accepted a small plate from Jamal, the cream cheese frosting stark white against the dark red crumb. It was as I took my first bite, the sweetness rich on my tongue, that Jamal nudged me. He held his own phone, his young face puzzled. "Grandma, what does this mean?" He turned the screen toward me. It was open to a social media app. At the top of the feed was a familiar profile picture, Chloe looking polished and professional. The post was recent, time-stamped just minutes ago. A picture of my cake before it was cut filled the frame. The caption beneath it stole the air from the room. "Counting down the days until freedom." It read, a party hat emoji, a champagne bottle emoji. My reading glasses were in my pocket. I did not need them. The words were clear. I read them once, then again. The noise of the party, Sarah's laughter, the clink of a coffee cup, someone's story about a vacation, began to recede, as if someone was turning a volume knob down. A coldness started in my chest, a solid block of ice forming behind my sternum. My eyes lifted from the bright screen. They found Chloe across the table. She was handing a plate to my cousin, her smile easy and self-satisfied. She glanced over, met my gaze. For a fraction of a second, her smile widened, a flash of something that was not affection. It was complicity. It was a secret she thought I was too old, too foolish to understand. She thought she was whispering to a like-minded world, not realizing the world included my grandson, and by extension, now me. The cold in my chest spread. It did not feel like sadness. Not yet. It felt like clarity. A sudden, piercing clarity, as if a veil I had refused to acknowledge had been ripped away. The little things. The comments about the house being a lot for me to manage. The questions about my will, framed as concern for getting my affairs in order. The hints about her debts, the temporary loans that never seemed to end. The eye rolls, carefully hidden but not well enough, when I talked about my book club or my gardening plans. They were not just thoughtlessness. They were a countdown. My life, my home, my stability, they were the prison from which she was awaiting parole. My death was her freedom. The room was quiet now. They had all seen my face change. The smile had fallen from it without my permission. Sarah was looking at me, concerned. Jamal was staring at his phone, then at his mother, his brow furrowed in confusion. Chloe's smile finally faltered under the weight of the silence. "Mom, you okay? Is the cake no good?" The sound of her voice, that performative concern, melted the ice. It transformed into something else, something calm and dense and purposeful. I looked down at my plate. The slice of cake, once a symbol of celebration, now looked like a prop. I set the plate on the table with a quiet click. I made my face soften. I constructed a smile. It was not the same smile from before. That one had been made of joy. This one was made of decision. "The cake is perfect, sweetheart," I said. My voice did not waver. It was steady, almost gentle. "Just perfect." I stood up. The room held its breath. I walked around the table. My steps were slow, measured. I did not look at anyone else. My focus was entirely on Chloe. Her expression shifted from confusion to a faint, nervous defiance. "Mom." I stopped in front of her. I opened my arms. I saw the relief flood her features. She thought it was forgiveness. She thought I was going to hug her and let it go, as I always had. The room exhaled, a collective release of tension. She stepped into my embrace. I held her tightly. I could feel the expensive silk of her blouse, smell her floral perfume. I leaned my head close to hers, my mouth near her ear. The chatter in the room started up again, hesitant at first, then gaining strength. They thought the moment had passed. I whispered then. My voice was so low, so intimate, only the two of us existed inside it. I spoke 5 words. 5 clear, irrevocable words. Her body stiffened in my arms, her breath hitched. I held the embrace for a second longer, a mother's comforting hug. Then I released her. I patted her cheek, my smile still in place. Her face was pale. Her eyes were wide, searching mine for a joke, for a misunderstanding. She found neither. I turned and walked back to my seat at the head of the table. I picked up my cake fork. "Now," I said to everyone, my tone light, "who needs more coffee? The fun is just beginning." The party continued, but it was like watching a play from backstage. I moved through the motions. I poured coffee. I accepted hugs and well wishes for my birthday. I smiled. All the while, I felt the shift in the room's center of gravity. It was no longer around me, the birthday matriarch. It was now a tense line stretching between Chloe and myself. She stayed by the dessert table, pretending to tidy the plates. Her hands were unsteady. Every few moments, her eyes would dart to me, a quick, nervous glance before flicking away. She tried to laugh at a joke my cousin made, but the sound was too high, too sharp. The color had not returned to her face. Jamal stood near her, his own plate forgotten. He kept looking from his mother to me, his adolescent mind trying to piece together a puzzle with missing pieces. Finally, he walked over to me as I collected empty cups. "Grandma," he said, his voice low, "what did you say to Mom? She looks sick." I placed the cups on a tray. "I just gave her a mother's advice, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." "Was it about her post, the freedom thing?" He was a smart boy, too smart for the games adults play. "That was messed up. I'm sorry she did that." I stopped and looked at him. His concern was genuine, and it touched that cold, solid place inside me, warming a very small corner of it. "Thank you, Jamal, but it's between your mother and me. You just enjoy the party." He nodded, not convinced, but walked back to his friends. I carried the tray to the kitchen. Sarah followed me, closing the swinging door partway behind her. "Ellie," she said, her voice a hushed murmur. "What on earth happened? One minute you're cutting cake, the next you look like you've seen a ghost, and then Chloe looks like she's the one who saw it." I ran hot water into the sink, watching the steam rise. Chloe posted something online. Jamal showed me. It was ill-considered. Sarah was silent for a moment. She had known Chloe since she was a girl. She had also lent me a sympathetic ear more than once over the years. "Ill-considered," she repeated, her tone flat. "That girl has always been a master of the ill-considered. What did it say?" I did not look at her. I began washing a coffee cup, the suds cool on my fingers. It said she was counting down the days until her freedom, posted on a picture of my birthday cake. Sarah's intake of breath was sharp. "Oh, Ellie, no." "Yes." "And what did you say to her, in that hug?" I rinsed the cup and set it on the drying rack. I picked up another. I simply made her aware that her countdown just reached 0. I could feel Sarah staring at me. The sounds of the party were muffled by the door. The running water was loud in the quiet kitchen. "What does that mean?" she finally asked. "It means the waiting is over," I said. My voice was even factual. "For both of us." I finished the cups in silence. Sarah dried them, her movements slow and thoughtful. We did not speak of it again. When we returned to the living room, the party was in its final phase. Coats were being retrieved. People were thanking me, their eyes holding a new, cautious curiosity. Chloe was by the door, helping people find their things. Her smile was a strained, tight line. When it was just family left, her, Jamal, and a few straggling cousins, she approached me. Jamal was putting on his jacket nearby, watching. "Mom, we're going to head out," she said. Her voice was too bright, like a too-hot light bulb about to blow. "Thank you for a lovely party." "Thank you for the beautiful cake," I replied. I did not move to hug her again. She shifted her weight. "Listen, about earlier, I think maybe you misunderstood my post. It was just a silly joke. About, turning 70 and being free from work and stress and all that." I looked at her. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. I saw Jamal pause, his hand on the doorknob. "There was no misunderstanding, Chloe," I said. "The message was quite clear. My hearing is excellent." Her jaw tightened. The placating mask slipped for a second, revealing a flash of frustration. "Well, it wasn't meant that way. You're being overly sensitive. It's a social media phrase." "Is it?" I asked. "Then I'm sure you won't mind explaining that phrase to Jamal, and to Sarah, and to anyone else who asks about it in the coming days, since it's just a phrase." The flash in her eyes turned to something closer to panic. She did not want to explain. She knew exactly how it looked. "Mom, don't be difficult." "I'm not being difficult," I said calmly. "I'm being precise. You were precise with your words. I am being precise with mine. Good night, Chloe. Drive safely." I turned and walked toward the kitchen, effectively dismissing her. I heard her stand there for another moment, then the sound of the door opening, a mumbled goodbye from Jamal, and the click of the latch. The house was suddenly, profoundly quiet. I stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by the detritus of celebration, crumpled napkins, empty glasses, plates with cake crumbs. The 70 candles, now just stubs of white wax, were still on the dining table. I walked over and began to clean. This was my ritual, the orderly restoration of my space. As I wiped tables and gathered trash, my mind was not on the party. It was on a sequence of actions. A list that had existed in the back of my mind for years, a contingency plan I had hoped I would never need to activate. The whisper was step one. It was the detonation of a silent alarm. It would set other things in motion, things Chloe knew nothing about. I thought of Marcus Thorne, my lawyer. I would call him first thing in the morning. The documents we had discussed in vague, hypothetical terms would need to be finalized. The bank transfers I had quietly initiated last week would now proceed. The appointment with the senior living community, which I had booked as a casual inquiry, was now a necessary visit. By the time I finished cleaning, the house was spotless. No sign remained of the party or of the fracture that had occurred within it. I turned off the lights and climbed the stairs to my bedroom. My body felt tired, but my mind was clear and alert. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the photograph on my nightstand. It was of Robert and me, taken on our 30th anniversary. His arm was around me, both of us smiling into a sun I could no longer feel. He had worked so hard to build this security, this home. He had trusted me to be its steward. I had also been a steward for Chloe. I had provided, supported, forgiven. I had believed that generosity would nurture gratitude. That belief had ended tonight, at the moment I read those 5 words on Jamal's screen. The whisper I had delivered to Chloe was simple. I had leaned in, my lips close to the diamond stud in her ear, and I had said, "The countdown is over. Your freedom starts now." She heard the words, but she did not understand them. Not yet. She felt the threat in them, the finality, but she could not grasp the mechanics. She would, though, very soon. The plan was no longer a quiet thought in the back of a ledger. It was in motion. And as I lay in the dark, I felt not sadness, but the steady, calm pulse of a long-deferred action finally begun. The first light of dawn was just a gray suggestion at the edges of the blinds when the pounding started. It was not a knock. It was a frantic, repetitive thudding against the front door, the sound of a fist, not knuckles. I had been awake for an hour already, seated in the armchair by my bedroom window with a cup of ginger tea. I had expected this. I had calculated the time it would take for her to check her accounts, to make a call, to understand. I took a final sip, the warmth of the tea a steadying contrast to the cool morning air in the room. I placed the cup on its saucer with a deliberate click. The pounding continued, accompanied now by a voice, shrill and distorted by the thick oak door. "Mom! Mom! Open the door, I know you're in there." I stood up. I walked to my closet and selected a robe, a heavy, quilted silk one Robert had given me. I put it on, tying the belt snugly. I smoothed my silver hair back with my hands. Then, and only then, I walked downstairs at my usual pace. The entryway was shadowed. Through the leaded glass of the door, I could see a blurred, jerking shape. I unlocked the deadbolt and turned the knob. Chloe fell into the foyer as if the door had been holding her up. She was still in the clothes from the party, the silk blouse wrinkled and untucked. Her makeup was smudged in dark rings under her eyes. Her hair was a chaotic cloud around her face. She smelled of stale perfume and panic. "What did you do?" She screamed the words, her voice raw. "What the hell did you do?" I closed the door against the chill morning and faced her. "Good morning, Chloe. You're here early." "Don't you good morning me?" She took a step forward, her hands clawing at the air. "My cards are declined. My checking account is empty. I called the bank and they said the primary funding source, your account, the automatic transfers have been canceled. They said it was at the account holder's request. What is going on?" I walked past her toward the kitchen. "I made some changes. Would you like some tea? You look like you could use it." She followed me, her footsteps slapping against the hardwood. "Tea? I don't want tea. I want you to fix this. My mortgage payment is due tomorrow. It comes from that account. My car payment, everything." I filled the kettle at the sink and set it on the stove. I lit the burner with a calm twist of the knob. "Then I suggest you make other arrangements," I said, turning to face her. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms over my robe. The automatic transfers were a convenience I provided. They were not an entitlement. Her face contorted. "Other arrangements? With what? You know my cash flow is tight right now. You can't just cut me off without warning." "I gave you warning," I said, my voice level. "Last night. I told you the countdown was over, that your freedom started now. This is what freedom looks like, Chloe. It looks like being responsible for your own cash flow." She stared at me, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The reality was beginning to penetrate the fog of her hysteria. This was not a temporary freeze, a mother's dramatic gesture to be apologized away. The chill in my voice, the calm in my posture, told a different story. "Is this about the post?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "I told you it was a joke. I'll delete it. I'll apologize. Just please, Mom, you have to restore the transfers. Just for this month. I'll pay you back, I promise." "No," I said. The kettle began a low whistle. I turned and took a second cup from the cupboard. "The post was a symptom, Chloe, not the disease. The disease was your belief that my money was your money, that my life was your waiting room. That belief is now terminally ill." "What are you saying?" Her voice was small now, childlike. "I am saying the Bank of Mom is permanently closed. The doors are locked. The assets have been moved." She shook her head, a frantic back and forth motion. "You can't do that. You're my mother, you have to help me." "I did help you," I said. The kettle screamed. I lifted it and poured the boiling water over the tea bag in my cup, then into hers. The steam rose in a cloud between us. "For 42 years, I helped you. The help has ended. What you see now is the consequence of mistaking generosity for obligation." She slumped into a kitchen chair, her body seeming to deflate. She put her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook. I placed her cup of tea on the table in front of her. I did not sit. After a minute, she looked up. Her eyes were red, but the tears were of rage now, not fear. "This is cruel. This is insane. You're punishing me over a stupid social media post." "I am not punishing you," I corrected her. I took a slow sip of my tea. "I am realigning our relationship. I am removing the financial component. From now on, we will have whatever relationship is possible between two adults who share DNA and a history. Nothing more, nothing less." "But the house," she said, a new thought dawning, her eyes widening with a fresh horror. My name, you said you always said. I said a great many things when I believed in a different future, I said. Your name is on nothing, Chloe, not the house, not any investment accounts, not anymore. The paperwork to remove you as a beneficiary on all instruments was finalized some time ago. The new will is already filed. You inherit a token sum, $1 to be precise, so there can be no claim of an oversight. The color drained from her face completely. She looked like a statue of herself, carved from ash. You cut me out of everything. I protected my estate from a hostile party, I said. It was prudent financial planning. My lawyer, Marcus, agreed. Marcus, she spat the name. You discussed this with him, behind my back. I sought legal counsel regarding my assets. I do not require your permission to do so. I set my cup down. Now I have a busy day. I have an appointment with Marcus at 9, and then a tour of the Kensington senior living community. I need to get dressed. She stood up so quickly the chair legs screeched against the floor. You're selling the house. You're moving to a home. Have you lost your mind? I am moving to a community, I said, walking toward the kitchen doorway, signaling the conversation was over. The house is being sold. The proceeds will fund my new life, a life I intend to live fully without anyone counting its days. She followed me into the foyer, a phantom of her former self. You can't do this. I'll fight it. I'll get a lawyer. I opened the front door. The cool morning air rushed in. You are welcome to try, but I assure you Marcus Thorne has done his work well. Everything is legal, notarized, and ironclad. You will waste your money, which, I remind you, you now need to manage very carefully. I stood holding the door open. She stared at me, her expression a turbulent mix of disbelief, fury, and a dawning, awful comprehension. She had come expecting a fight she could win with tears and manipulation. She had found a wall instead. She walked past me, out onto the porch. She turned, her eyes searching my face for any crack, any sign of relenting. She found none. You'll regret this, she whispered, but the threat had no force. I have only one regret this morning, I said, that I did not do it 5 years sooner. I closed the door. I locked it. I listened as her car started, the engine revving too high before speeding away. I went upstairs to dress. My hands were steady. My heart rate was normal. The cold, solid place within me felt like a foundation. It was done. The first real consequence had been delivered. She was awake now, in the world she had so carelessly wished for, and I had a meeting with my lawyer to attend. The meeting with Marcus was at 9. I had 2 hours. I went to my study, the room that had been Robert's and then became ours. It was lined with books, the large oak desk positioned to catch the morning sun. On that desk sat a single gray ledger book. It was not old or leather-bound. It was a modern, durable accounting ledger. I had bought it 5 years ago, after the second time I bilaid Chloe out of credit card debt. I sat in the high-backed chair and opened it. The first page was a title, written in my careful script, for Chloe. Beneath that, in smaller letters, a record of gifts and loans. The entries began over 20 years ago. They were not small. I turned the pages, my finger tracing the neat columns of dates, amounts, and purposes. June 15, 2003, $25,000 down payment assistance for condo. August 3, 2005, $12,000 payoff of graduate school loan, final installment. May 10, 2010, $35,000 wedding expenses. September 15, 2015, $28,500 down payment on current home, supplemental. October 5, 2018, $15,000, emergency to cover overspending after vacation. January 12, 2021, $42,000 private school tuition for Jamal, 2 years. November 30, 2022, $18,000 car lease payoff. March 10, 2024, $9,500 credit card consolidation. The list went on. There were smaller amounts, too. $2,000 for a new refrigerator when hers broke, $5,000 for unexpected medical bills not covered by her insurance, $3,000 for Jamal's summer camp. I had recorded every transfer, every check. I had noted whether it was termed a gift or a loan. After 2018, I stopped using the word loan. I knew the money would never be repaid. The column for repaid held a single, consistent entry. No. The running total at the bottom of the most recent page was a figure that would have made Robert sigh. It was not just money. It was security. It was the padding that had allowed Chloe to live beyond her means, to cultivate an image of effortless success. It was the sacrifice of trips I did not take, investments I did not make, a retirement fund I had drawn from more than I should have. I did not look at the numbers with anger. I looked at them with clarity. They were proof of a pattern, proof that my generosity had not been a safety net, but a floor she had come to expect as her rightful foundation. I closed the ledger. I placed it in my leather satchel, along with the folder of documents Marcus had sent over for today's signing. Then I drove downtown. Marcus Thorne's office was in a quiet brick building. His receptionist, Elaine, smiled warmly. "He's expecting you, Mrs. Vance. Go right in." Marcus stood up from behind his desk as I entered. He was a tall man, with a close-cropped cap of white hair and sharp, intelligent eyes behind rimless glasses. We had been friends since Robert brought him on to handle our estate planning decades ago. "Ellie," he said, coming around to take my hands. His grip was firm. "How are you holding up?" "I am precisely as I intended to be, Marcus," I said, taking a seat in the client chair. "Resolved." He nodded slowly and returned to his seat. "Chloe called my office this morning, 7:15. My assistant took the message. She was agitated, demanding an appointment to discuss what she called elder financial abuse." He said the phrase without inflection. "I am not surprised," I said. "Did you take the appointment?" "I did not," Marcus said. "I informed my assistant that I could not discuss any client's affairs with a third party without written authorization from said client, which, of course, I do not have." She was not pleased. "I imagine not." I opened my satchel and placed the ledger on his desk. Then I laid out the documents he had prepared. "Everything is in order." He pulled the papers toward him, his demeanor shifting to pure professionalism. "It is. The irrevocable trust is established and funded with the assets we discussed. The new will is executed and filed. The deed to the house has been transferred to the cooperative entity of the Kensington community, per your sales agreement. The beneficiary designations on all retirement and investment accounts have been changed to the trust. Your powers of attorney for healthcare and finances designate the trust administrator, not Chloe." He looked up at me. "It is, as we intended, ironclad. She cannot challenge the will with any real hope of success. The trust is out of reach. The house is no longer yours to bequeath." A feeling of finality settled in the room, quiet and dust-moted in the slants of morning sun through the blinds. It was done. The legal machinery of my decision was now a fact. "There is one more thing, Marcus." I tapped the gray ledger. "This is a personal record of all significant financial support I have provided Chloe over the last 20-plus years. I want you to scan it. Keep a digital copy with my files. If she ever does attempt legal action, alleging I was not of sound mind or was unduly influenced, I want this entered as evidence. Not of my sound mind, but of her long-standing dependency and the rational basis for my actions." Marcus opened the ledger. He flipped through a few pages, his eyebrows rising slightly at the totals. He let out a low whistle. "This is comprehensive." "It is a history," I said. "One she has chosen to forget, I chose to remember, in ink." "It's smart," he said, closing the book. "It provides context. A judge would see this and understand this wasn't a capricious decision. It was a long-term financial relationship being terminated." He looked at me, his professional mask softening for a moment. "It's also brutally cold, Ellie. Are you prepared for that? For her to see this?" "She saw the social security of my support," I said. "She never saw the cost. It's time she did. I am not doing it to be cruel. I am doing it so there is a record. So that when she tells her story of a vengeful mother, there exists a counter-story of a depleted bank account." Marcus was silent for a long moment. "And the emotional cost to you?" I met his gaze. "The emotional cost was paid in installments, Marcus. Every time I wrote a check I knew would never be repaid. Every time I heard her complain about her burdens while living in a house my money helped buy. The final payment was made last night when I read her birthday wish for my death. This, I gestured to the documents, to the ledger, this is just the receipt. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Then we proceed. I'll have Elaine scan this today. The trust is active. The Kensington deal will close in 30 days. You are legally disentangled. Thank you, Marcus. I stood up, feeling the weight of the morning, but not bowed by it. It was the weight of a necessary task completed. Ellie, he said as I reached the door. I turned. For what it's worth, Robert would be proud. Not of the strife, but of you protecting what you built together. He was always softer with her than you were. He might not have had the stomach for this, but he would have known it was right. I nodded, a tightness in my throat that had nothing to do with sadness. It was acknowledgement. Thank you for saying that. I walked out into the hallway, the ledger now in Marcus's care, the documents signed and executed. The numbers were no longer just entries in a book. They were the foundation of my freedom and the wall of hers. The arithmetic of our relationship was now complete. The sum was 0. The air outside Marcus's office was brisk. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, the leather satchel now lighter without the ledger and documents. The legal machinery was in motion. There was no turning back, and I felt no desire to do so. The cold clarity that had taken residence within me was a more comfortable companion than the confused hurt of the past few years. I drove across town, not toward home, but toward the Kensington Senior Living Community. I had a scheduled tour at 11. It was not a tour of desperation, but of due diligence. I had researched this. I had planned for it, not as a bleak necessity, but as a deliberate choice. The community was situated near the Botanical Gardens. The buildings were low, modern structures with large windows and covered walkways connecting them. Gardens, even in late fall, showed careful landscaping. I parked and walked toward the main administration building. My appointment was with a woman named Beatrice. Her office was bright, with photographs of community events on the walls, art classes, group trips, gardening clubs. Beatrice herself was around 60, with a warm, no-nonsense manner. Mrs. Vance, she said, shaking my hand. Welcome. I understand you're considering a move from your single-family home. I am, I said. The house is too large for me now. I am looking for community, not just an apartment. That's what we provide, she said, gathering a set of keys and a binder. Let me show you. We walked along a paved path. The air smelled of damp leaves and pine. She showed me the common areas, a large library, a bright art studio with pottery wheels, a dining hall that looked more like a nice restaurant than an institution. We passed a group of women coming from a yoga class, laughing together. The atmosphere was not one of waiting, but of engagement. This is our most popular apartment style, Beatrice said, unlocking a door in a building named the Maple Wing. She held the door open for me. It was not my house. It was smaller, naturally. A single bedroom, a living area, a small kitchenette, and a bathroom. But the windows looked out onto a central courtyard with a fountain. The walls were a neutral cream, the floors a warm laminate. It was a blank canvas. It was a space for a new chapter, not a storage unit for an old life. It's adequate, I said, walking to the window. Beatrice smiled, not offended. Many residents say it feels like a hotel suite at first. Then they make it their own. The freedom from maintenance is what most people cherish. No more lawn care, no more worrying about a leaking roof or a failing furnace. That's all handled. Freedom. The word hung in the air between us, weighted with a different meaning than the one Chloe had used. What is the social structure like? I asked. I have no interest in forced bingo. She laughed. No forced activities. There are interest clubs, book clubs, film discussion, investment group, walking club. You can be as involved or as private as you wish. The key is that the opportunities are outside your door, not a 20-minute drive away. I nodded. It aligned with my research. And the financial model, the cooperative ownership. She opened her binder. The proceeds from your home sale purchase your share in the cooperative, which grants you lifetime tenancy in this apartment style. That fee covers all maintenance, amenities, and 1 meal per day in the dining hall. Your monthly service fee covers utilities, housekeeping twice a month, and the ongoing operations. It is designed to be predictable. There are no hidden assessments if the roof needs repair. The model is stability. Stability, predictability. These were the things I had built and that Chloe had treated as an inevitability, not an achievement. I would like to proceed, I said, turning from the window. I have already listed my home. My lawyer, Marcus Thorne, has the details. He can coordinate with you on the transfer of funds and the closing. Beatrice's professional demeanor softened into genuine pleasure. That's wonderful, Mrs. Vance. We'd be delighted to have you. The next step is the application packet and a deposit to hold this specific unit. The process usually takes 30 to 45 days. That is acceptable. I took the packet from her. We walked back to her office. As I filled out the preliminary forms, my handwriting steady, I felt a sense of forward motion that was entirely my own. Later, back in my own quiet house, I did not feel its emptiness as a loss. I saw it as inventory. I went to my desk and opened a different folder. This one was not gray and sober, but filled with brochures and printed web pages. One was for a marine biology research institute in Florida. Robert had loved the ocean. We had always talked about funding a small scholarship in his name. I had a figure in mind, a sum that would generate enough interest to support one undergraduate student's fieldwork each year. The Robert Vance Memorial Field Grant Asterisk. It was a modest dream, but it was concrete. It would do tangible good in his name long after I was gone. The principal from the trust could fund it in perpetuity. Another brochure was for a tour company specializing in cultural journeys for small groups of seniors, a river cruise through southern France, a culinary tour of northern Italy. These were not fantasies. They were itineraries with dates and prices. I circled two that interested me. The third item was a simple flyer for the community art studio at Kensington. Pottery classes, watercolor workshops. I had not touched clay since college. The thought of getting my hands dirty again, of creating something useless and beautiful, held a quiet appeal. This was my blueprint, not an end, but a series of beginnings. My freedom was not an escape from something, but a movement toward many things. It was funded, planned, and legal. It involved no counting of days, except perhaps the counting down to a departure date for a trip. The house phone rang, shattering the afternoon quiet. I knew who it was before I picked it up. Mom, Chloe's voice was strained, attempting calm and failing. We need to talk, really talk, not like this morning. I am listening, I said, my eyes still on the tour brochure. I went to see a lawyer, a different one. He looked at what he could access publicly. He said the trust structure you used is very strong. He said contesting it would be long, expensive, and unlikely to succeed. That is an accurate assessment, I said. A long silence. I could hear her breathing. Why are you doing this? To hurt me? To teach me some kind of lesson? The lesson is a byproduct, I said. I am doing it to live my life. You publicly stated your desire for your freedom to begin. I am simply honoring that wish and claiming my own in the process. My freedom looks like a scholarship in your father's name. It looks like an apartment near the gardens. It looks like a pottery class. What does yours look like now, Chloe? You should define it. You have all the freedom you asked for. The line was so quiet I thought she had hung up. Then I heard a sound, a choked sob of pure frustration. You're enjoying this. No, I said, and it was the truth. I am not enjoying it. I am executing a plan. There is a difference. Enjoyment implies emotion. This is simply logistics. I placed the brochure back in the folder. I had packing to begin. The click of the phone ending that call was a period at the end of a very long sentence. I placed the receiver back in its cradle. The silence in the house was no longer empty. It was full of purpose. I returned to my folder of brochures, but now I moved from consideration to action. I called the Marine Biology Institute first. I spoke to a development officer named David. My questions were specific. What was the minimum endowment to fund an annual field grant? What were the administrative fees? Could the grant bear my husband's name in perpetuity? David was professional. sending me links to formal documentation while we spoke. I told him I would have my lawyer review the agreement and contact him within the week. The sum I earmarked was significant, but it was a figure I had calculated long ago. It would not deplete the trust's core. It was a redirecting of funds from an inheritance that would have been squandered to a legacy that would endure. Next, I called the tour company. I asked about the river cruise in France for the following spring. I inquired about single occupancy supplements, accessibility, and cancellation policies. I did not book it, not yet. I requested a detailed itinerary and a firm quote. I placed the paperwork in the folder. Then I began to pack. I started with the books in my study. I did not pack them all. I sorted them into 3 piles: keep, donate, give to Jamal. The process was methodical, not sentimental. Each book was a decision. I filled a box with the ones I would keep, enough for one small bookcase in my new apartment. I labeled it clearly. The following day, I returned to Marcus's office. I brought the scholarship paperwork with me. "You're moving quickly," he observed, taking the documents. "There is no reason to delay," I said. "I have reviewed these. They seem in order. I would like you to conduct the final review and then initiate the transfer from the trust to establish the endowment." Marcus put on his reading glasses and scanned the pages. He nodded slowly. "This is a fine thing, Ellie. Robert would have loved this." "I know. That is why I am doing it. It is a better use of the money than a new luxury car for Chloe to lease." He made a note on a legal pad. "I'll have this wrapped up by Friday. The trust is already structured to allow for charitable distributions. It's straightforward." He looked up. "And the other matter, the cooperative. The deposit is made. The application is approved. The closing date for my house is set for 4 weeks from today. The transfer of funds to Kensington will happen concurrently. I will move the following week." "And Chloe?" he asked, his voice neutral. "Chloe is dealing with the reality of her finances," I said. "That is no longer my concern. My concern is ensuring Jamal is protected from the fallout." Marcus leaned forward. "You've set up the educational trust for him." "I have. The documents are here." I slid another folder across the desk. "A 529 plan, fully funded for the remainder of his secondary schooling and 4 years of university. The trustee is you, Marcus, not Chloe. Disbursements are for tuition, books, and reasonable living expenses paid directly to the institutions. Chloe cannot access it. Not for a management fee, not for an emergency. It is for Jamal alone." Marcus opened the folder, checking the signatures and the notary seal. "This is airtight. He's a good kid. He shouldn't suffer for his mother's choices." "My thoughts exactly. I will speak to him about it soon. He needs to hear it from me to understand the why of it all." I left Marcus's office with the distinct feeling of closing loops. Each signed document, each transferred dollar, was a thread of the old life being neatly clipped and tied off. My new life was not a vague hope. It was a series of appointments and account numbers. That afternoon, I drove to a storage facility on the edge of town. I rented a small, climate-controlled unit. I began moving the boxes of items I would keep but not take to Kensington immediately: family photo albums, Robert's watch collection, my good china. I was distilling a house into a storage locker and an apartment. The process was physical, and I welcomed the fatigue at the end of the day. A few days later, I met Sarah for lunch. She chose a quiet cafe. She studied me as I sat down. "You look different," she said. "I am different," I replied, opening the menu. "Chloe called me. She's not well. She's frantic. She says you've stolen her inheritance." "I have not stolen anything," I said, my voice even. "I have reassigned my assets. An inheritance is not a possession until the owner dies. I am very much alive. She was counting on that changing. I have simply made other arrangements." Sarah stirred her tea. "She says you're moving to a home." "I am moving to a community. It has an art studio and a chef. It is a choice, not a sentence." "And the house?" "Sold. The money will fund my life. A portion of it will fund a scholarship in Robert's name." Sarah was silent for a long moment. Then a slow smile spread across her face. It was not a happy smile, but one of grim understanding. "You're really doing it. You're pulling the rug out from under her, but you're building a new floor for yourself. I am removing a safety net that was being used as a hammock, I corrected. And I am building a porch for myself to sit on. A very nice porch with a view of the gardens. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Good for you, Ellie. I mean it. All these years, listening to her complaints, watching her spend, I never thought you had it in you. Neither did I said, until I did. When I returned home, there was a courier envelope taped to my front door. I took it inside and opened it at the kitchen table. It was from a law firm I did not recognize, Latham and Pierce *. It was a formal letter addressed to me. Dear Mrs. Vance *. We represent your daughter, Chloe Vance Mitchells. It has come to our attention that you have recently undertaken significant alterations to your estate plan. Our client is deeply concerned about your well-being and the possibility of undue influence. We request a meeting at your earliest convenience to discuss these matters, with the goal of reaching a family-oriented resolution. Sincerely *. Jonathan Pierce *. I read it twice. Then I picked up the phone and called Marcus. I read him the letter. He snorted. Latham and Pierce. They're ambulance chasers with nicer stationery. This is a fishing expedition. They have no grounds. They're hopping to scare you into a settlement. What is your advice? I asked. My advice is to ignore it. They have not filed anything with the court. This is a letter designed to provoke a reaction. If they file an actual motion, which I doubt they will, we will respond forcefully with the ledger, the doctor's reports affirming your competency, and the mountain of paperwork showing this was a deliberate, years-in-the-making plan. They will lose, and they will advise their client to drop it. Thank you, Marcus. I hung up. I placed the letter in the folder with my Kensington paperwork. It was not a threat. It was a piece of evidence. Evidence of Chloe's next move, which was as predictable as it was weak. I went to my study and took out the one photograph I knew I would bring to my new apartment. It was in a simple silver frame. It showed me, much younger, sitting on a park bench. A 3-year-old Chloe was on my lap, both of us laughing at something just outside the frame. Her small hands were wrapped around one of my fingers. I looked at the picture for a long time. I felt the echo of that laughter, a faint, distant sound. Then I placed the photograph face down on the desk. I would pack it last. It was not a reminder of what I was losing. It was a reminder of what had been once real, and why the choices I was making now were necessary. I called Jamal on his cell phone. He answered on the second ring, his voice hesitant. Grandma. I would like to see you, I said. If you are willing, there are some things I need to explain. A pause. Mom's really upset. I know she is. This does not concern her directly. It concerns you. Will you meet me? The old diner by the park, tomorrow after school. Another pause longer. Okay, I'll be there. The diner was a place we used to go when he was younger, for pancakes after a soccer game. It was unchanged, red vinyl booths, the smell of grease and coffee. I arrived first and chose a booth in the back. I ordered a black coffee. I saw him come in, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his face a careful mask of teenage neutrality. He slid into the seat opposite me. Hey, Grandma. Hello, Jamal. Thank you for coming. The waitress appeared. He ordered a chocolate milkshake. We sat in silence until it arrived, the tall glass sweating condensation. He took a long sip through the straw, then looked at me. So, what's going on? Mom says you've gone crazy and are giving all our money away. I did not flinch at the phrasing. I have not gone crazy. I have made deliberate changes to my financial and legal situation. Some of those changes affect your mother. One of them affects you directly. I want you to hear it from me. He put the milkshake down. Affects me how? Your education, I said. I have established a trust for you. It is a 529 educational plan. It is fully funded to cover your remaining private school tuition and 4 years of university, including room and board and books. His eyebrows lifted in surprise. That was not what he had been expecting to hear. You paid for my school. The trust pays for it, directly to the school. The trustee is my lawyer, Mr. Thorne, not your mother. The money can only be used for qualified educational expenses. It cannot be accessed for any other reason. He processed this, his eyes on the milkshake glass. Why? I mean, thank you, but why set it up like that? Why not just give it to Mom for me? Because the money I have given your mother in the past for your needs has often been diverted, I said, my voice factual, not accusatory. The private school tuition 2 years ago, I paid it directly because the money I had given her the year before for that purpose was used for other things. This trust removes that possibility. It ensures the money for your future goes to your future. He nodded slowly, understanding dawning. She's mad because you're cutting her off. She is upset because a financial dynamic that has existed for her entire adult life has ended, I said. That dynamic was unsustainable. It was also damaging, to her and to our relationship. Was it because of the post, the birthday thing? His voice was quieter now. The post was the catalyst, I admitted. It was the public expression of a private feeling she has harbored for years. The feeling that my life and my assets were an obstacle to her freedom. I have removed that obstacle. He played with his straw. She shouldn't have done that, it was really messed up. But cutting her out completely, selling the house, isn't that kind of harsh? I took a sip of my coffee. It was bitter and hot. It is definitive. I chose definitiveness over prolonged negotiation. Your mother is a skilled negotiator when it comes to my money. She uses emotion, guilt, family obligation. I removed the subject of the negotiation. There is nothing left to discuss. So you're really moving to that old folks' home? To a senior living community. Yes, I have already packed many of my things. The house sale closes in 3 weeks. He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw the boy beneath the young man's guarded expression. Will I still see you? The question, simple and direct, touched that small, warm corner inside the cold foundation. Of course you will. I will be 20 minutes away. You have a standing invitation. You can come for dinner in the dining hall, or we can get a milkshake. That does not change. What changes is that I will no longer be the source of funds for your mother's household. You and I will have our own relationship, separate from that. He absorbed this. She said you're trying to turn me against her. I am not, I said firmly. That is not my purpose. My purpose is to ensure you are not collateral damage in a financial war you did not start. You are her son. You should love her. You should also understand that adults make choices, and choices have consequences. Her choices have led to these consequences. My choice is to protect your future from the fallout. He was quiet for a long time, spinning his glass on the Formica table. She's really scared. She and Dad had a big fight last night. About money. I heard them. I had expected this. Chloe's husband, David, enjoyed the lifestyle my subsidies afforded but had little patience for drama. That is unfortunate, but it is their marriage to manage, not mine. Do you hate her? The question was a whisper. I considered it. No, I do not hate her. Hating her would mean she still has an emotional claim on me. She does not. I feel resolved. What she did extinguished a certain kind of love, the kind that writes blank checks. What remains is the historical fact of being her mother and the practical reality of being your grandmother. I am focusing on the latter. He finally took another drink of his milkshake, almost finishing it. Can I ask you something? Why did you give her so much money all those years? If it made you this, resentful. It was a sharp question. I gave it out of love, and out of a hope that my help would allow her to build her own security so she would not need me forever. That hope was misplaced. The love was taken for granted. The resentment came from the realization that I was not helping her stand on her own feet. I was allowing her to lean on me so heavily that she forgot how to stand at all. He nodded, as if that made a certain brutal sense. Okay. Okay. Okay, I get it. I don't like it. It's all really messed up, but I get why you're doing it. He looked at me. Thank you for the school thing, really. You are welcome, Jamal. You are a good young man. Your future is yours. This is just removing some of the obstacles from it. We sat for a few more minutes. He finished his milkshake. I paid the check. We walked out to the parking lot together. Before he got into his car, he turned and gave me a quick, awkward hug. It was stiff, but it was real. I'll see you, Grandma. You will. I watched him drive away. The conversation had gone as well as it could have. He was hurt and confused, but he was not lost to me. I had secured his path forward, breaking the cycle of dependency for the next generation. It was the most important piece of the plan. Driving home, I felt a fatigue that was deeper than physical. It was the fatigue of emotional excavation, but beneath it was solid ground. I had spoken the truth to Jamal. I had not softened it, nor had I weaponized it. I had presented it as fact, and he had understood. The house awaited, half-packed boxes in every room. It was no longer a home, but a project nearing completion. I walked through the quiet rooms. In the living room, I saw the ghost of a little girl playing on the rug. In the kitchen, I saw a teenager rolling her eyes as I asked about homework. Those ghosts would have to find a new place to linger. I was moving on. And I had just ensured that my grandson was coming with me into a future built on more solid ground. The fallout was not silent. It arrived in fragments, pieces of Chloe's crumbling reality that found their way to me through the lines of communication that still existed. The first was a voicemail from David, Chloe's husband. His voice was strained, stripped of its usual polished cordiality. "Eleanor, it's David. I think we need to talk. Man to well, adult to adult. Chloe, not, things are getting out of hand here. Call me back, please." I did not call him back. His adult to adult talk would be a negotiation, a plea for me to restore the status quo for the sake of his domestic peace. His peace was not my responsibility. The second fragment was a text message from Chloe herself, a week after my meeting with Jamal. It was a photograph, not of a bill or a legal document, but of her living room. The expensive modern furniture was still there, but in the corner of the frame I could see a large, flat cardboard box, the kind that holds assemble-it-yourself shelving. The text read, "Selling the sectional, buyers coming tonight. Happy now." I did not reply. The sale of a sofa was not a tragedy, it was an adjustment, one she would have to make many times over. Sarah provided the third fragment over coffee. She had heard from a mutual friend. Chloe and David were at the Crawfords' dinner party last weekend. Apparently, they had a massive fight in the driveway. Everyone heard. David was yelling about her financial illiteracy and her toxic entitlement. Chloe was screaming that he was a failure for not making enough to support their lifestyle. The Crawfords said it was brutal. They left early. I stirred my coffee. That is unfortunate for the Crawfords' dinner. Sarah gave me a look. "Ellie, be serious. Their marriage is cracking." "It was built on a foundation of my subsidies," I said. "I removed the foundation. The cracking is a structural issue, not a personal one. They will either repair it with their own materials or it will collapse. That is not my business." The most direct fragment came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was in the study, packing the last of the books, when my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize, but the area code was local. I answered. "Mrs. Vance." It was a woman's voice, polite but firm. "This is Elaine Pritchard from Kensington Private School. I'm calling regarding Jamal Vance Mitchell's tuition for the upcoming semester." "Yes," I said, my guard going up. "We haven't received the payment, which was due last Friday. We've left several messages for Mrs. Vance Mitchell's, but we haven't heard back. As you were the previous guarantor, we were hoping you could help us reach her or clarify the situation." This was it, the first real domino to fall in Jamal's world. Chloe had let the tuition bill lapse, either hoping the school would call me and pressure me, or more likely, because she simply did not have the funds and was paralyzed. "Ms. Pritchard," I said, keeping my voice even, "I am no longer the guarantor for that account. However, the tuition is covered. Please contact Mr. Marcus Thorne of Thorne and Associates. He is the trustee of an educational fund for Jamal. He will provide immediate payment and set up automatic disbursements for all future bills. I will text you his office number now." There was a surprised pause on the other end. "Oh, I see. That's wonderful. We'll contact him right away. Thank you, Mrs. Vance." "You are welcome. Please ensure all future communications regarding billing go directly to Mr. Thorne's office." I hung up and sent Marcus's contact information to the number. Then I called Marcus. He confirmed he would handle it. The money is already in the dedicated account, Ellie. I'll wire it today. The school will have it by morning. Thank you, Marcus. Ellie, she let it go to the point of them calling you. That's deliberate or deeply irresponsible. It is both, I said, but it is also irrelevant now. The system is in place, it works around her. The final fragment arrived in person. It was late evening. I was cleaning out the pantry, discarding old spices. The doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. It was Chloe. She was alone. She was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt, no makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked younger and utterly drained. I opened the door. She didn't try to push in. She stood on the porch, the rain a fine mist behind her. The school called me, she said. Her voice was flat. They said everything is handled by Marcus Thorne. That is correct. You set up a fund for Jamal. I did. You told him about it. You met with him. This wasn't a question. It was an accusation of betrayal. I did. He needed to understand the changes. He is old enough. She hugged herself against the chill. He looks at me differently now. He knows. David is talking to a lawyer, a different kind of lawyer, not about you, about us, about separation. I said nothing. I waited. I had to sell the car, she said, the words dropping like stones. The lease was up and I couldn't handle the buyout. I'm driving David's old sedan. The refrigerator is making a noise, a grinding noise. I don't know how to fix it and the repairman wants $200 just to look at it. She looked past me into the hollowed-out hallway of my house at the stacked boxes. You're really leaving. I am. Where will I go for Thanksgiving? The question was small, plaintive, a child's question from a woman's mouth. That is for you to decide, I said. You have your own home, you can host, or you can make other plans. My apartment will be too small for hosting. A bitter smile twisted her lips. Your apartment, at the Asterisk community. She said the word like it was a synonym for prison. Yes. She looked at me then, her eyes searching my face for any sign of softening, any crack in the resolve. I'm drowning, Mom. I met her gaze. Then learned to swim, Chloe. The lifeguard has retired. Her face crumpled for a second, then hardened into a mask of pure resentment. It was more real than anything she had shown me in years. Without another word, she turned and walked back into the drizzle, to the outdated sedan parked at the curb. I closed the door. I locked it. I listened to the car start and drive away, the sound fading into the patter of the rain. I returned to the pantry. I picked up a jar of paprika, years past its expiration. I unscrewed the lid and dumped the rusty red powder into the trash. The consequences were no longer theoretical. They were the grind of a failing appliance, the absence of a leased car, the cold space at a holiday table. They were the tangible results of a freedom she had not understood, delivered with the precision of a legal filing and the finality of a sold sofa. Her unraveling was not my vengeance. It was her arithmetic, and she was just beginning to add it up. She came on the day of the move. The house was an echo chamber of bare floors and blank walls. All that remained was a single armchair in the living room, a small table, and the boxes waiting for the movers tomorrow. I was sitting in the chair when the key turned in the lock. I had not changed the locks yet, a final, symbolic oversight. Chloe let herself in. She stopped in the doorway, taking in the emptiness. Her face was pale, set in lines of exhausted determination. She closed the door behind her. The sound echoed. I'm not here to fight, she said, her voice too loud in the space. Then why are you here? I asked. I did not stand up. She walked slowly into the living room, as if navigating a minefield. She had dressed for battle, a sharp blazer, heels, but the effect was hollow against the backdrop of our stripped history. To make you see reason, to get you to stop this madness before it's too late. It is already too late, I said. The house closes tomorrow, the trust is funded. My apartment is waiting. These are facts, not negotiations. They can be undone, the composure cracked, her voice rising. You can rescind the sale, you can revoke the trust. Marcus told me some of it might still be reversible if you act now. He said it would be complicated, but possible. Marcus was informing you of technicalities. He was not advising reversal. I have no intention of revering anything. She began to pace, her heels clicking on the hardwood. Why, for God's sake, why are you doing this? To prove a point? You've proved it, I get it, I was wrong. The post was ugly and stupid. I'm sorry. Is that what you want, an apology? Fine, I apologize, I am so very sorry, Mother. She spat the last word. An apology is for a spilled drink, Chloe, not for a lifetime of expectation. Your post did not create this situation. It revealed it. She stopped packing and faced me. What did I do that was so terrible? Expect that a mother would help her daughter, want a future that wasn't a constant struggle. You confused help with subsidy, I said. You viewed my life as an interim state before your payday. That is not a daughter's love. That is a beneficiary's impatience. So you're disinheriting me because I was grateful enough. Her laugh was short and harsh. You want me to grovel, to list every penny and thank you for it. I thanked you. You acknowledged the transfers. You did not understand the cost, not just the financial cost. The cost of knowing my child saw me as a ledger entry. The cost of realizing the love I thought was mutual was, for you, transactional. Tears of frustration welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. That's not true. I love you. You may believe you do, I said, my voice calm. But love does not post a countdown to a parent's death on a birthday cake photo. Love does not assume access to another person's lifetime of work. What you feel is a familiar attachment mixed with a sense of proprietary right. That is not love. It is habit. She stared at me, her chest rising and falling rapidly. You're hateful. You're a cold, hateful old woman. I am not hateful. I am finished. There is a difference. She moved to the window, her back to me, looking out at the familiar yard she had assumed would one day be hers. What am I supposed to do? David has moved out. Temporarily, he says. My credit is ruined. I have to sell the house. My asterisk house. Jamal looks at me like I'm a stranger, all because of you. No, I corrected. All because of the financial structure you built on my back. I removed myself as the load-bearing wall. Your structure is collapsing. That is the consequence of poor architectural planning. She whirled around. You could fix it. With one phone call to Marcus, you could restore the transfers just enough to get me through this patch. I'll sign anything. A repayment plan, a contract. I'll never ask for another thing. I looked at her at the desperate bargain in her eyes. It was the same bargain she had always made and I had always accepted. Promises of change in exchange for cash. No, I said. There are no more contracts between us. The last one was voided the moment you hit post. The bank is closed. Permanently. The rage finally broke through. It flooded her face, turning it sharp and ugly. You selfish bitch. After everything Dad left you, after everything we built as a family, you're going to take it all and give it to strangers, to a asterisk senior center. You're throwing your family away for a bunch of lonely old crones and a pottery class. I let the words hang in the empty air. They bounced off the bare walls and faded. I waited for the echo to die completely. Then I spoke. You counted the days to your freedom from me, I said, each word clear and separate. I just decided to give us both that gift today. You are free, Chloe, free from waiting for me to die, free from the obligation of pretending gratitude you did not feel. And I am free, free from the burden of your expectation, free to use the remainder of my life and my resources as I see fit. You wished for freedom. I granted it, for both of us. The rage drained from her as suddenly as it had come, leaving her hollow. She understood now. This was not a punishment. It was a granting of her wish. The cruelty was in the literalness of it. You'll die alone in that place, she whispered, but it was a last, feeble curse. Perhaps, I said, but I will die having lived my last years on my own terms, not as a waiting room for your next chapter. Silence filled the space between us, wider than the empty room. There was nothing left to say. All the arguments, the justifications, the pleas had been exhausted. She had played every card and I had not budged. The game was over. She walked slowly to the door. Her hand on the knob, she paused but did not turn around. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Chloe. She opened the door and stepped out into the afternoon light. I did not watch her go. I listened to the sound of the door closing. The latch clicked with a soft, final sound. I sat in the armchair for a long time in the quiet, empty house. I felt no triumph, no sorrow. I felt a vast, quiet space. The transaction was complete. The emotional debt accrued over decades had been called in and settled. The balance was zero. I stood up. There was one last box to seal. It contained the photograph from my desk, the one of us laughing in the park. I placed it inside, closed the flaps, and taped it shut. I wrote apartment on the side in bold black marker. Then I took my purse and the single house key that remained on my ring. I walked out of the house for the last time as its owner. I locked the door. I did not look back. The conversation was over. There would be no take-backs. The moving van arrived at Kensington at 9 a.m. Two efficient men unloaded my boxes and the few pieces of furniture I had kept, the armchair, my writing desk, the small dining table. They placed everything in the center of the living area of my new apartment. When they left, I stood alone in the space, surrounded by the tidy stacks of my condensed life. Sunlight streamed through the large window overlooking the courtyard. I could hear the faint splash of the fountain. From down the hall, a woman's laughter echoed, clear and unself-conscious. The air smelled of fresh paint and floor cleaner. I began the work of unpacking. It was a systematic process. Kitchen items in the small cabinets. Books on the shelves I had asked the maintenance man to install the day before. Linens on the bed. I hung my clothes in the closet. It did not take long. By noon, the boxes were broken down and stacked by the door, and the apartment had begun to resemble a place where someone lived. I made a cup of tea in my new kitchenette and took it to the window. I looked out at the gardens. People were walking the paths, some with canes, some with dogs, some in pairs deep in conversation. There was no urgency, no sense of waiting. From the last box marked apartment, I removed the silver picture frame. I wiped the glass clean with the edge of my sleeve. The photograph of a young mother and a laughing child stared back at me. I studied it, not with pain but with recognition. That had been real. That joy had been true. Its ending did not invalidate its existence. I placed the frame on the bookshelf beside a volume of Robert Frost poetry. It was not a shrine. It was an artifact. A piece of personal history accorded its proper place. A knock sounded at my open door. A woman about my age stood there, her white hair cut in a stylish bob. She wore comfortable-looking slacks and a bright blue cardigan. "Hello there," she said, her voice friendly. "I'm Irene from across the hall. Welcome to the Maple Wing." "Thank you, Irene. I'm Alina. Please come in." She stepped just inside, glancing around with an appreciative eye. "You've unpacked already. You're efficient. It took me a week to muster the energy." "I had motivation," I said. She smiled, understanding more than I had said. "Well, if you need anything, a cup of sugar, the gossip on which bridge players cheat, I'm your source. Also, a group of us are going to the dining hall for lunch at 12:30. You're welcome to join. No pressure." "I would like that," I said, and found that I meant it. At 12:25, I walked across the hall. Irene introduced me to two other women, Marjorie and Lena. We walked together to the dining hall. The conversation was light, discussions of the morning's watercolor class, the merits of the new chef's salmon, an upcoming lecture on local bird species. No one asked about my past. No one needed to. We were all here in this present by choice or by circumstance, and that was the common ground. After lunch, I returned to my apartment. The afternoon stretched before me, unstructured. I remembered the flyer for the art studio. A beginner's pottery class started at 2 p.m. I changed into older clothes and walked down the covered pathway. The studio was large and bright, filled with tables, wheels, and shelves of lumpy, glazed creations. The instructor, a younger woman named Sophia, welcomed me. There were 5 other students, all residents. We were each given a block of wet clay. "Today, we just get familiar with the material," Sophia said. "No goal, just feel it. Center it if you want, or make a coil, or a pinch pot, it's your clay." I sat at the wheel. I had not done this in 50 years. I wet my hands and placed the cool, gray mound on the center of the spinning disc. I applied pressure, trying to find the center. The clay wobbled, fought me, threatened to fly off. I slowed my breathing. I adjusted my hands. I focused on the feel of the slick mud against my palms, the hum of the wheel, the sheer physicality of it. Slowly, unevenly, the clay began to center. It rose into a cone, then sank back down into a steady, spinning mound. It was not perfect, but it was centered. From there, I gently pressed my thumbs into the middle, opening a hole. I pulled the walls upward, my fingers wet and slick. A simple cylinder began to form. I was not thinking about Chloe or the house or the ledger. I was thinking about the pressure of my left thumb against my right forefinger. I was thinking about the consistency of the slip. I was present, in a sunlit room, making something from mud. When the class ended, my cylinder was lopsided, its walls uneven. Sophia said it had good potential. I would let it dry and maybe trim it next week. I washed the clay from my hands and forearms at the deep sink. My skin felt clean. Walking back to my apartment, I passed the main lounge. A man was playing jazz standards on a baby grand piano. A few people sat listening, tapping feet, nodding. I paused for a moment in the doorway, listening to the familiar melody of Take the A Train. Irene saw me and waved from a sofa. She patted the empty seat beside her. I hesitated for only a second, then went and sat down. We listened to the end of the song. When the pianist started another, she leaned over. "Bridge group meets tomorrow morning. Cutthroat, you play." "I used to," I said. "Good, we need fresh blood." I smiled. It was a small, genuine smile, not the performance I had given at my birthday party. This one reached my eyes. Later, back in my apartment, as the evening light faded, I sat in my armchair. The photograph on the bookshelf was in shadow, just a glint of silver frame. The sounds of the community were muted through the walls, a distant television, a closing door, a burst of laughter from the courtyard. I picked up the tour company brochure from my side table. I looked at the itinerary for the river cruise in France. I took a pen and circled a departure date for the following spring. I would book it tomorrow. I felt neither lonely nor triumphant. I felt a quiet sense of alignment. My actions had consequences. Chloe was living hers. I was living mine. The freedom she had so carelessly wished for had been granted, in a form she did not recognize. My freedom was this: a centered piece of clay, a planned journey, a bridge game tomorrow, and the simple, profound quiet of a space that was wholly, irrevocably mine. I turned on the lamp beside my chair. The circle of light fell on my book. I opened it and began to read. Outside, in the courtyard, the fountain continued to splash, a steady, gentle sound marking the passage of time, no longer counted down in days, but simply lived, one after the other, in the peace I had built for myself.